Hey everyone, ready to jump into Apple's first quarter 2025 earnings?
Always exciting, right?
Especially since the report drops tomorrow, January 30th.
Get ahead of the game.
Exactly. We've been poring over financial news, analyst projections, even some market sentiment reports, all to give you the inside scoop.
Should be interesting.
So by the end of this deep dive, you'll know what the experts are saying, what's behind those predictions, and what it all means.
Both for Apple and, of course, for anyone watching their stock.
First up, the analysts are expecting revenue around, $124.04 billion.
Not bad.
A 3.7% increase year over year. Sounds decent on the surface.
It does, yeah. But it's actually a bit slower compared to how Apple's been doing the past few years.
Okay, so why might that be?
Well, a few things, like the global economy,
All right.
Inflation, interest rates going up. It makes people think twice about spending.
Even on shiny new iPhones.
Even then, yeah. Plus, Apple's got more competition these days.
Really?
Especially in China, places like that. Companies like Huawei, Xiaomi, they're stepping up their game.
So even Apple feels the heat.
It's the market, no one's immune. But here's the thing that's got me intrigued.
Lay it on me.
Analysts are predicting their earnings per share, the EPS, to jump by 8.3% this quarter.
Wait, so that's $2.36.
That's right.
But hold on. How's that possible if their revenue growth is slowing down?
It's all about profitability. Even if they sell a bit less, they can still make more profit per item.
Oh, I see. So it's like...
Exactly. Fewer units sold, but each one brings in more money. That's the strategy.
Clever.
And that's where Apple services come in. Things like the App Store, Apple Music, all those subscriptions.
Right. Everyone's subscribing to something these days.
And that, for Apple, is gold. Services have much higher profit margins than, say, selling a physical iPhone.
Because...
Once they build the service, the cost to keep it running is way lower.
So even if iPhone sales level off a bit...
Services pick up the slack, boost those overall profits. Analysts are saying something like $26 billion in revenue just from services this quarter.
Wow, that's a serious chunk of change.
Investors are going to have their eyes glued to that number.
Can't blame them. But let's not forget the iPhone itself. Analysts are still projecting $70.7 billion in revenue.
Yeah, but that's actually a dip compared to last year.
Interesting.
Goes back to what we were saying, competition heating up, especially in that Chinese market.
So even the iPhone isn't untouchable.
It's a tough market out there, got to stay on top of things.
Which makes those new products Apple's cooking up even more important, right? The Vision Pro headset, for example.
Absolutely. New stuff like that might not be huge money makers right away, but they show that Apple's still pushing boundaries.
It's about proving they can still wow us.
Exactly, and it's key for their future growth. Can't just rely on the iPhone forever.
Now, let's talk about Apple's stock. It's been on a bit of a roller coaster ride, down 14% from its highs in 24, but still up 19% over the past year.
Makes you wonder what's behind those swings, right?
Yeah, what do you make of it?
Well, stock prices are all about what investors believe, how confident they are in a company's future.
Oh, okay, so...
That recent dip might be some investors getting nervous about iPhone sales or the whole economic situation.
Makes sense, but then again, it's still up for the year overall.
Exactly. Shows there's still a lot of faith in Apple's long-term potential.
And I guess we'll get a better picture tomorrow when those earnings drop.
Absolutely. It's a big moment for Apple, a chance to show their strength and how they're adapting to the changing tech world.
So, to sum it up, Apple's Q1 earnings are coming out tomorrow, and while revenue growth might be modest, earnings per share are looking good.
Key takeaway.
iPhone sales are feeling the pressure, but their services are booming. It's all about diversification for Apple, finding new ways to grow.
Go stay ahead of the curve, right?
You got it. Investors will be watching closely to see how Apple's tackling these challenges, especially with their new products like the Vision Pro.
Fascinating stuff.
It is, and it'll be interesting to see if Apple can pull off another win. But hey, what do you think? Do you think Apple's performance will match up to these predictions? Let us know in the comments, and be sure to tune in tomorrow for the big reveal.
Yeah, should be a good indicator of where they're headed.
It really makes you think about all those services and the Vision Pro together, Like Apple's not just selling you a phone anymore. They want to be part of your whole life.
It's that whole ecosystem play, right? Analysts are definitely picking up on that. Apple's looking beyond just hardware.
So it's less about the individual gadgets and more about being plugged into this whole Apple universe.
You got it. Entertainment, finances, how you connect with people, even augmented reality with the Vision Pro.
Makes you wonder if down the line it'll be less about buying an iPhone and more about subscribing to Apple,
Interesting thought. Recurring revenue, That's the sweet spot for a lot of companies.
Definitely. Speaking of the Vision Pro, what's the early word on that? Is it going to be the next big thing, or does it all hype?
A lot of buzz, for sure. Some analysts think it's the biggest thing since the Apple Watch.
Wow.
Others are, I guess, more cautious, wait-and-see approach.
Makes sense. VR and AR haven't really taken off the way some people predicted.
True. Biggest hurdle for the Vision Pro. Overcoming that whole gimmick image, I think.
Because for most people, VR is still that gaming thing.
Exactly. Apple's got to show that the Vision Pro is actually useful. Improves your everyday life, work, communication, all that.
So more than just a cool gadget, it needs to offer real value.
Absolutely. And that's where that whole ecosystem strategy comes in again. Imagine the Vision Pro working seamlessly with your other Apple devices, your services. Suddenly, it's not just a headset, it's part of this whole connected experience.
The more integrated it is, the easier it is to use.
Exactly. That's the key. Less friction, more adoption.
So the Vision Pro, it's a bit of a wild card then. Huge potential, but also some big challenges to overcome.
That's a good way to put it. But even if it doesn't become a massive hit right away, it shows Apple's thinking big.
And that's got to be reassuring for investors. They want to see that Apple's still hungry for innovation.
Absolutely. But hey, let's shift gears a bit. Remember we talked about Apple stock, that roller coaster ride?
Yeah, up and down.
Well, even with all that volatility, a lot of analysts are still saying buy on Apple stock.
That's a pretty strong statement. Why are they so confident?
Well, first off, Apple's in a great financial position. Tons of cash on hand.
So they have room to maneuver.
Exactly. Invest in new stuff, buy other companies, or even give some back to shareholders through dividends, things like that.
Smart.
And don't forget, Apple fans are incredibly loyal. People love their Apple products. They stick with them.
That reduces the risk for investors, right? That built-in customer base.
Big time. And analysts see a lot of growth potential for Apple, especially with those services and wearable tech.
It's not just about the next quarter. It's about the long game.
You got it. Betting on Apple's ability to keep adapting and winning.
Makes sense. But for folks trying to make their own predictions about Apple's future, what are the big questions they should be asking themselves?
Good question. Well, how well do they think Apple can handle the heat in the smartphone market?
Yeah, with all those competitors popping up.
Right. And can they really make those services a major growth engine, enough to balance out any slowdown in iPhone sales?
Because that seems to be the big shift for Apple, right?
Yes.
Building that service ecosystem.
It is. And what about the next big thing? What kind of products or innovations do we think Apple needs to pull out of their hat to stay on top?
They can't just rest on their laurels.
No way. Got to keep moving in the tech world.
So those are the big questions to chew on as we wait for tomorrow's earnings.
It's going to be fascinating to see how Apple tackles all this, what their vision is for the future.
It's like they're standing at a crossroads, Challenges all around, but also these big swings they're taking.
And that's what keeps things interesting, right? Not just the numbers themselves, but the strategy behind them.
We've been talking a lot about the financial stuff, revenue, stock prices, all that.
Sure.
But there's this other side to Apple, too.
What do you mean?
The cultural impact, they're not just a company, they're like a phenomenon.
I see what you're saying. Apple products, they're almost status symbols, right?
Exactly. And their designs, that Apple look, it's instantly recognizable.
It's become synonymous with being cutting edge, high quality.
It's more than tech. It's like a lifestyle.
Totally. Like buying an Apple product says something about you.
Or at least who you want to be.
Yeah.
It's powerful stuff.
No doubt. That kind of brand power, it's priceless. They can charge a premium for their products, and people still line up for them.
And that's probably why investors are still so gung-ho about Apple. Even with the bumps in the road, they see something special there.
It goes beyond just selling gadgets. It's that design, the user experience, the marketing.
And that history of innovation, right? Always one step ahead.
They're not just following trends, they're setting them. That's the Apple mystique.
And that's what makes it so fascinating to watch them now.
Yeah.
Can they pull it off again?
Yeah.
Reinvent themselves?
Can they overcome these challenges and still stay on top? It's the big question.
So as we wrap up, I want to leave everyone with this thought. When those earnings come out tomorrow, don't just get caught up in the numbers.
Good advice.
Think bigger. Think about the long game, the cultural side of Apple, too.
Are they really creating that ecosystem they're aiming for? Are they still the innovators they claim to be?
And most importantly, what do you think the future holds for Apple? Will they stay on top, or will they fall behind?
Big questions. The kind that make you think.
That's what we're here for, to spark those conversations. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive into Apple's Q1 2025 earnings report. Don't forget to check out the actual numbers when they drop tomorrow, and stay tuned for more deep dives into the tech world and beyond. We'll see you next time.